Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get started. Our story begins with a woman named Emma. A woman caught between the weight of the world and the dream she held dear. She wasn't rich, she wasn't famous, but she had something more precious, a dream of opening her own art studio. It wasn't easy, though. Emma worked as a waitress at a small cafe, earning just enough to scrape by, paying rent on a shabby apartment that barely felt like home. But it was all she had, and she held on to that dream, even when the odds seemed stacked against her. One day, she found herself at a high-end restaurant, a place where the lighting was warm, and the air smelled of expensive wine and delicate meals. The kind of place where every plate was a work of art, and every guest seemed to exude confidence. But Emma didn't feel confident at all. Her second-hand dress clung to her like a reminder of all the things she couldn't afford, her shoes scuffed from too many days on the pavement. She wasn't supposed to be here. Yet, she had promised her best friend, Jenny, that she would go through with this blind date. No matter how out of place she felt, Emma had agreed. She took a deep breath and entered the restaurant, her heart pounding in her chest. Her eyes scanned the tables, each one more elegant than the last. Her gaze landed on a man sitting alone at a table near the back of the room. He was sharply dressed, with neatly styled dark hair, looking engrossed in his phone. That had to be him. She took a hesitant step forward, forcing a smile on her face as she walked over. "Hi. You must be Kevin," she said, her voice a little shaky as she reached the table. The man looked up, blinking for a moment as though confused. Hi Emma," he replied, his voice low, caught off guard by her sudden appearance. For a brief moment, neither of them said anything. Emma misread the confusion on his face as shyness. She slid into the seat across from him, her hands trembling in her lap. She could feel the weight of her nerves, but she pressed on. "I know this is awkward," she said with a nervous laugh. "Blind dates are weird, right? Jenny told me you might be a little quiet, so don't worry. I can talk enough for both of us." The man, Kevin, opened his mouth to say something but hesitated. His business associate had just texted to cancel their meeting, and something about Emma's earnest smile made him pause. He decided to play along, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "Right, blind dates are something else." Emma laughed nervously and took a sip of her water. "Tell me about it," she said. "Jenny's been trying to set me up for months, but I've been too busy. You know, work." She hesitated, not sure what else to say. "What do you do?" Kevin asked, genuinely curious. Emma fiddled with her napkin, a small smile playing on her lips. "I'm a waitress," she replied. "Not exactly glamorous, but it pays the bills. Well, most of them, anyway." Kevin looked at her, intrigued. "And you? What do you do?" he asked, leaning back slightly in his chair. "I work in tech," Kevin said, his response a little vague. Emma's eyes lit up, impressed. "Tech? That's cool. Like coding and apps and stuff?" "I'm terrible with computers," she laughed, trying to hide the awkwardness. Kevin just smiled, but didn't elaborate. Their conversation flowed from there, surprisingly easy, despite the initial awkwardness. Emma shared funny stories from her shifts at the diner, talking about her dream of opening an art studio one day. She was open, genuine, and that was something Kevin hadn't encountered in a long time. He found himself laughing more than he had in months, her enthusiasm contagious. It was refreshing to talk to someone so real. "You're not what I expected," Emma said suddenly, her tone thoughtful as she took another sip of water. "Jenny said you were a little reserved, but you're actually easy to talk to." Kevin chuckled, leaning forward slightly. "You're easy to talk to too," he said, his voice warm. Emma beamed, feeling the tension in her chest ease. Just as she was about to ask him more about his tech work, her phone buzzed. She pulled it out, reading the message from Jenny. "Hey Emma, where are you? I'm at table 7. Looking forward to meeting you, Kevin." Her stomach sank as she reread the message. She looked up at Kevin, her face flushed with embarrassment. "You're not Kevin, are you?" she asked, barely above a whisper. Kevin's smile faltered, guilt flashing in his eyes as he stood up. "No, I'm not," he admitted. Emma's face turned bright red. "Oh my God," she muttered under her breath. I'm so sorry, I sat at the wrong table. This is so embarrassing. She grabbed her coat and stood up, ready to bolt for the door. Wait, Kevin called after her. It's okay, Emma. But Emma was already rushing toward the exit, her face burning with shame. As she stepped outside, Kevin watched her go, a strange mix of regret and curiosity swirling in his chest. He hadn't expected to feel this way, but there was something about her. Something genuine, something he hadn't felt in a long time. He wondered if he would ever see her again, and why the thought of not seeing her bothered him so much. It's been a few days since that awkward incident at the restaurant. Emma had tried to put it out of her mind, but she couldn't help replaying the moment over and over in her head. Every time she thought about it, her cheeks burned with embarrassment. She never expected to meet anyone like him. Kevin was different from the usual men she encountered. He wasn't the polished, ego-driven type. He seemed real, genuine in a way that was rare. And that made her feel even more foolish for running out on him. She had told herself it was just a mistake. She had sat at the wrong table, and that was that. He was just another person she'd met in passing. But there was something about him. Something that stayed with her long after she walked out the door. His smile, his quiet patience, his understanding. For the first time in a long time, Emma felt like she mattered to someone. Days passed, but she couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the end. She had told Jenny about the mix-up, laughing it off, but Jenny wasn't fooled. Emma, you like him, don't you? She had asked with a teasing grin. No, Emma had replied quickly, but even as the words left her mouth, she knew it wasn't true. She liked him. She couldn't deny it. But what was the point? She wasn't his type, and he probably didn't even remember her. Then, just when she thought the whole thing was behind her, she got a message. It was from an unknown number. Hi Emma, this is Kevin. I hope you're doing well. I know this may seem strange, but I would really like to meet you again. Perhaps we can have a proper conversation this time? Let me know if you're interested. Kevin. Her heart skipped a beat as she read the message. Could it be? Was he really reaching out to her? After all that had happened? She read the message again to make sure she wasn't imagining it. But there it was, clear as day. She felt a flutter of excitement deep inside her. And then, a wave of doubt followed. What if he was just being polite? What if he thought it was just a funny misunderstanding and didn't actually want to get to know her? She stared at the screen for a long time, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. She had a million thoughts racing through her mind. Part of her wanted to decline, to save herself from potential disappointment. But another part of her couldn't ignore the hope that had sparked when she saw his name. After a few minutes, she took a deep breath and typed a reply. Hi Kevin, I didn't expect to hear from you. I would love to meet again. How about coffee sometime? Emma. She hit send before she could second-guess herself. Her hands trembled slightly as she placed her phone down, trying to distract herself with other things. But her mind kept drifting back to him. What would this mean? Could they really have a normal conversation this time? The next day, Kevin responded almost immediately, suggesting a small cafe in the city. They set a time for the afternoon, and Emma spent the next few hours trying to calm her nerves. She picked out a simple outfit. Nothing too flashy, just comfortable, and tried to pretend like this wasn't a big deal. But it was. When Emma arrived at the cafe, her heart was pounding in her chest. The cafe was cozy and intimate, with warm lighting and soft music playing in the background. She stepped inside, scanning the room for Kevin. And there he was, sitting at a small table by the window, looking just as composed and put together as he had that night in the restaurant. He smiled when he saw her, standing up to greet her. Emma felt a rush of warmth in her chest as they exchanged awkward but genuine smiles. Hi, Kevin said, his voice calm and inviting. I'm glad you came. I'm glad you reached out, Emma replied, sitting down across from him. I wasn't sure if you really wanted to meet again after what happened. Kevin chuckled softly, shaking his head. I wasn't sure if you would either, but I thought we could at least give it a shot. He paused, then added, it was a weird situation, but I'd like to get to know you better. Emma's heart fluttered. His honesty was refreshing, and for the first time in days, she felt like maybe, just maybe, she wasn't a fool for being interested in him. They spent the next hour talking about their lives, their interests, their pasts. Kevin was just as intriguing as she remembered. His reserved nature gave way to a surprising warmth as they shared stories, and she found herself opening up in a way she hadn't in a long time. As the conversation flowed, Emma couldn't help but feel a connection. The awkwardness of their first meeting seemed like a distant memory, replaced by the easy rhythm of their conversation. She had never met anyone quite like him. "So," Kevin said after a while, his eyes meeting hers. "What's your dream? You mentioned it briefly the other night, but I want to hear more about it." Emma smiled, feeling a surge of confidence. "I've always wanted to open an art studio," she said, her voice soft but determined. "I love painting, and I want to create a space where people can come together and share that love." Kevin's expression softened. "That sounds amazing," he said quietly. "You deserve to see that dream come true." Emma's heart skipped a beat. She had never expected him to say something like that. The way he looked at her, the way he believed in her dream, it made her feel like anything was possible. And for the first time in a long time, she began to wonder if maybe she could trust this connection, this chance encounter, to lead her somewhere real. The next few days passed in a blur for Emma. She couldn't stop thinking about the coffee date with Kevin. There was something about him that made her feel seen, understood in a way she hadn't felt in a long time. Their conversation had flowed so easily, and for the first time in ages, she felt like her dreams were possible. She found herself smiling at the most unexpected moments, replaying the way Kevin had looked at her when she talked about her art studio. It was as if he truly believed in her. But, as much as she tried to enjoy the feeling of connection, Emma couldn't shake the nagging doubt in the back of her mind. She knew Kevin was different from the men she usually met, but there was still something that didn't sit right. He was a wealthy, successful tech entrepreneur, far removed from her world of waitressing and art dreams. She started questioning whether she was just another passing fancy to him, someone he'd forget about once he found someone else more suitable for his life. She wasn't his type, she kept telling herself. He probably saw her as a brief distraction. Her thoughts spiraled until she couldn't take it anymore. The uncertainty was eating at her, and she needed answers. So, when Kevin reached out a few days later to invite her to another gathering, this time a charity gala he was hosting, she hesitated. It was an opportunity for her to see him in a different light, an opportunity to learn more about the man behind the polished exterior. She debated with herself for a long time before finally agreeing to go. Part of her was excited to spend more time with him, but the other part was terrified of what this event would mean. Was this just another grand gesture? A way for Kevin to impress people? Or was it a way for him to show her that he was serious about her? The night of the gala, Emma stood in front of the mirror, adjusting her dress. It was simple, elegant, but not too flashy, perfect for someone like her. She wasn't used to these kinds of events, but she had learned to carry herself with confidence, especially in front of people who lived in a world so different from hers. Her hands trembled slightly as she finished her makeup, glancing at the clock. She arrived at the venue, her heart racing as she stepped out of the car. The gala was held in a grand ballroom, with massive chandeliers that sparkled like stars. The room was filled with well-dressed people laughing and talking, exchanging business cards and pleasantries. It was a world Emma was familiar with only from a distance. She immediately felt out of place. As she walked into the ballroom, she scanned the crowd, hoping to find Kevin. It didn't take long before she saw him, standing at the center of a conversation with some of his colleagues. He was dressed in a sharp black suit, exuding the confidence and power that came with his success. But when he saw her, his eyes softened, and he excused himself from the conversation. Emma's heart skipped a beat as he made his way toward her. "Emma, you made it," Kevin said, his voice warm and sincere as he greeted her with a smile. "I'm so glad you could come." "Thanks for inviting me," Emma replied, her voice a little shaky as she offered a nervous smile. "It's a lot to take in." Kevin chuckled, his eyes twinkling. "I know. It's not exactly your usual scene, but I thought you might enjoy the experience." He glanced around the room, then looked back at her. "I'm really glad you're here. I've been thinking about our last conversation. You're right. You deserve to pursue your dreams. You shouldn't have to settle." Emma felt a surge of warmth in her chest at his words. They weren't just polite pleasantries. Kevin was being sincere. For the first time, she realized how much he genuinely cared about her well-being, beyond the surface-level attraction. He wasn't just interested in impressing her with his wealth or status. He wanted to see her succeed. They spent the next hour talking and laughing, with Kevin introducing Emma to some of his colleagues and friends. She felt more at ease as the night went on, even managing to relax a little in the crowd. She realized she was beginning to see him differently, not just as a millionaire businessman, but as someone who believed in her, someone who was willing to help her achieve her dreams. Just as Emma started to feel a sense of belonging. In this new world, something unexpected happened. The evening's event took a more serious turn when the host announced that the auction for the charity fundraiser was about to begin. Kevin, who had been silent for a moment, turned to Emma. "I'm glad you're here, Emma," he said, his voice low and sincere. "I know I'm not the easiest person to get to know, but I'm trying. I want to be someone who supports you, who helps you reach your goals. Maybe tonight is the beginning of something real. I want to give you the chance to take the next step in your dream. I believe in you." Her heart swelled with emotion as she listened to his words. She had never heard anything like this before. For the first time, she truly believed that Kevin wasn't just interested in her for some fleeting moment. He wanted something deeper, something lasting. Maybe, just maybe, she wasn't alone in her dreams anymore. As the auction began and the crowd murmured with excitement, Emma realized she was no longer the woman who had walked into that restaurant, embarrassed and unsure of herself. She had come a long way, and the night felt like the first step towards something new, a future full of possibilities. And it was all because of the man standing beside her, offering her a chance to believe in herself again. The night after the charity gala, Emma couldn't stop thinking about everything that had happened. Kevin's words replayed in her mind over and over again, his promise to support her and her dreams. It wasn't just what he said, it was the way he said it. The sincerity in his voice had taken her by surprise, and for the first time in a long time, Emma felt like she had someone in her corner, someone who truly believed in her potential. It was more than just the attraction between them. It felt like something real was beginning to take shape. Over the next few weeks, their relationship continued to grow. They met more often, sharing small moments, coffee dates, long walks through the park, quiet dinners at cozy restaurants. Emma started to learn more about Kevin beyond his professional exterior. She discovered his love for simple things, like a good book or a quiet evening at home, and his passion for giving back to his community. He wasn't the typical rich, aloof businessman she had expected. He was genuine, thoughtful, and kind, and the more she got to know him, the more she realized how much they had in common. One afternoon, while they were sitting in a small cafe, Emma found herself opening up in a way she never had before. They had been talking about the future, about her dreams of opening an art studio. Kevin had been asking questions about her plans, but this time, it was different. She wasn't just talking about her art as a dream anymore. She was speaking about it as something tangible, something that could actually happen. She realized, as she spoke, that she no longer felt like a person who was just hoping to make her dream come true. She felt like a person who was actually on the path to making it happen. Kevin listened intently, his eyes never leaving hers. "I want to help you make that happen, Emma," he said softly. "I know it's not going to be easy, but I believe in you. I believe in your talent. If you need anything, financial support, guidance, anything, I'm here for you. You don't have to do this alone." Emma looked at him, feeling a rush of emotions. She had always been independent, determined to make it on her own. But hearing Kevin's words, seeing his genuine desire to help, made her realize that maybe, just maybe, she didn't have to do everything by herself. Maybe it was okay to lean on someone, to accept help from someone who truly cared about her well-being. She reached out across the table and took his hand, the simple gesture speaking volumes. "I don't even know how to thank you, Kevin," she said, her voice soft but filled with gratitude. "You've already done so much just by believing in me. You don't know what that means to me." Kevin smiled, squeezing her hand gently. "You don't need to thank me," he said. "I just want to see you happy. I want to see you succeed. And I know you will." For the first time, Emma realized that she wasn't just falling for Kevin because of his wealth or success. She was falling for him because of the way he saw her, the way he believed in her even when she didn't believe in herself. He didn't treat her like a project or someone to be saved. He treated her as an equal, as a person with potential. It was a feeling she hadn't experienced before, and it left her both terrified and exhilarated. As the days went by, Emma found herself thinking more and more about her future. She started making plans for her art studio, sketching out ideas for what it would look like and how she could make it a reality. She even began looking at possible locations for the studio, researching what it would take to get started. And through it all, Kevin was there, supporting her, encouraging her, helping her take the next steps. He never once pushed her to do anything she wasn't ready for, but he was always there, a steady presence, offering his support when she needed it most. It wasn't long before Emma realized that her feelings for Kevin had grown deeper than she had expected. She had started out thinking this was just a chance meeting, a brief connection with someone she would never see again. But now, as she spent more time with him, as she shared more of herself with him, she began to understand that what they had was more than just an attraction. It was something real, something worth fighting for. One evening, as they sat together on a park bench, watching the sun set over the city, Kevin turned to her. "I know we've been taking things slow," he said, his voice gentle. "But I need to be honest with you, Emma. I care about you. A lot. More than I've cared about anyone in a long time. And I want to be there for you, not just as someone who supports your dream, but as someone who's in your life for the long haul." He paused, his gaze softening. "I don't expect anything in return. I just want you to know that I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." Emma's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't expected him to say that, but hearing those words filled her with a warmth she hadn't realized she'd been missing. She smiled, her eyes shining as she reached out to take his hand. "I care about you too, Kevin," she said quietly. "More than I ever thought I would. I'm so glad you're in my life." The moment hung between them, full of unspoken promises and the quiet understanding that they were both ready to take the next step in their relationship. For Emma, it felt like the beginning of something new, something real, something that she had been dreaming about for so long, but never truly thought was possible. And now, with Kevin by her side, she was starting to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could make her dreams come true. As the weeks went by, Emma and Kevin's bond continued to grow stronger. It wasn't just about the late-night conversations anymore or the moments of laughter they shared. It was the way they supported each other, the way they made each other better. Emma had started making serious strides toward opening her art studio. With Kevin's encouragement, she found herself looking at the next steps with more clarity and confidence than ever before. He wasn't just the man she was falling for. He had become her biggest ally. One afternoon, they sat in a quiet cafe, sipping coffee as Emma spread out sketches for her studio. The idea that had once seemed like a distant dream now felt possible. She had researched locations, gathered estimates, and even started putting together a small portfolio to showcase her work. She glanced across the table at Kevin, who was watching her with an intensity that made her feel seen in a way she never had before. He was so different from the other men she had met. He wasn't just interested in her because of her art. He truly cared about her success, her happiness, her future. "I can't believe how far we've come," Emma said, looking at the plans before her. "I never thought I'd actually be doing this." Her voice was full of disbelief, but there was also excitement in her words. Kevin smiled, his eyes softening as he leaned forward. "I always knew you could do it," he said, "and I'm proud of you for taking the leap." He paused for a moment, his gaze shifting to the window where the sun was setting. "You've worked so hard for this, Emma. You deserve to see your dreams come true." His voice was filled with sincerity, and Emma's heart fluttered as she realized just how much he believed in her. Emma reached across the table and took his hand, feeling the warmth of his touch. "I don't think I could have done this without you, Kevin," she said quietly. "You've been my biggest support, my reason to keep going when I doubted myself." She looked into his eyes, searching for the right words. "You've changed everything for me." She knew she was no longer just grateful for his help. She was grateful for him. Kevin squeezed her hand gently, a tender smile playing on his lips. "I'm just here for you," he said softly. "I want to see you succeed, but more than that, I want to be the one standing by your side when it happens." His voice was full of quiet emotion, and Emma could hear the sincerity in every word. It was then that Emma realized just how deep her feelings for Kevin had become. She had started out thinking this was just a simple connection, something temporary. But now, she couldn't imagine her life without him in it. He had become not just her partner in her dreams, but also someone who understood her in ways she hadn't known were possible. He wasn't just a millionaire CEO with connections. He was someone who had given her a chance to believe in herself. As they walked out of the cafe, hand in hand, Emma couldn't help but feel a surge of gratitude. She had come so far, and she owed so much of that to Kevin. He had been there for her when no one else had, offering more than just financial support. He had given her his belief in her, and in return, it made her believe in herself. But Emma's journey wasn't without its challenges. As the opening of her art studio drew closer, there were still moments of doubt. The pressure to succeed weighed heavily on her, and there were days when the fear of failure threatened to take over. She had always been independent, relying only on herself, and now she had to confront the idea that asking for help didn't make her weak, it made her human. One evening, as they sat together on the balcony of Kevin's apartment, watching the city lights twinkle below, Emma spoke up. "Kevin, what if I fail? What if all of this is just a big mistake?" Her voice was barely a whisper, but the vulnerability in her words was clear. Kevin turned to her, his expression soft but unwavering. "You're not going to fail," he said firmly. "I believe in you. And even if things don't go exactly as planned, I'll be here. We'll figure it out together. But I have no doubt in my mind that you will succeed." He paused, his eyes locked onto hers. "I'm with you, Emma. Always." His words were simple, but they filled her with a sense of calm she hadn't felt in weeks. For the first time in a long time, Emma felt the weight of her fears lift. It wasn't about the fear of failure anymore. It was about the strength she found in the support of someone who truly cared about her. And as she looked at Kevin, sitting next to her, she realized that she wasn't just moving forward in her dreams. She was moving forward in her life, with someone who would be there every step of the way. She leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling the warmth of his embrace. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." She wasn't sure where this journey would take her, but one thing was certain. She wasn't alone anymore. And that, in itself, was enough to make her believe that anything was possible. Months passed, and Emma's art studio was beginning to take shape. What had once seemed like a distant dream was now becoming a reality. The studio was filled with sunlight, casting soft shadows on the walls that would soon be lined with her paintings. The place was starting to feel like home, but it was also a reminder of how far she had come, and how much more she still wanted to achieve. Every day brought new challenges, from managing the business side of things to finding the right materials. But through it all, Kevin remained by her side, his unwavering support a constant source of strength. One evening, as they sat in the quiet of her studio, Kevin looked around with a smile. "I can't believe this is happening," he said, his voice filled with pride. "This is exactly what you've always wanted, Emma." He stood up, his eyes gliding over the room, taking in the vibrant colors on the canvases and the warmth of the space she had created. Emma smiled back, but there was a hint of uncertainty in her eyes. "It's amazing," she agreed, "but I still feel like there's so much to do. I don't know if I'm ready for all of this. What if it doesn't work out?" The doubt crept in, as it often did when she looked around at the empty spaces in the studio and wondered whether she had made the right choice. The fear of failure was something she couldn't escape. Kevin walked over to her, taking her hands in his. "You're ready," he said firmly. "And even if things don't go perfectly, it doesn't change how far you've come. You've already succeeded in so many ways, Emma. You've built this from the ground up. You've made your dream a reality." His voice was steady, his belief in her palpable. Emma's heart swelled at his words. She had worked so hard to get to this point, and hearing Kevin's encouragement made her realize that maybe she was ready. Maybe she wasn't just chasing a dream anymore. She was living it. "You really believe in me, don't you?" she asked softly, her eyes meeting his. "I do," Kevin replied without hesitation. "I've seen what you're capable of. You've got the passion, the drive, and the heart to make this work. And even if there are bumps along the way, I'll be right here, supporting you. You're not alone in this." He paused, his gaze softening as he continued. "I'm proud of you, Emma. More than you know." The sincerity in his voice melted the last of her doubts. Emma realized that her fears, though valid, didn't have to hold her back. She wasn't alone anymore. Kevin had been there through the hard days, the long nights, the moments of self-doubt. And now, as they stood together in the studio, she felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As the weeks turned into months, the studio began to fill with life. Emma's art took center stage, and people started to notice. The community embraced her work, and slowly but surely, her dream began to thrive. But it wasn't just the success of the studio that made Emma's heart swell. It was the way her relationship with Kevin had deepened. He wasn't just a partner in her business. He was a partner in her life. They had built something together, not just a studio, but a shared future. One evening, as they were walking through the city, the lights twinkling around them, Kevin turned to Emma with a thoughtful expression. "I've been thinking," he said, his voice calm but full of emotion. "We've been through so much together, and I can't imagine my life without you in it. Not just because of the studio, but because of you. You make me a better person. You make everything better." He paused, his gaze softening as he reached out to take her hand. Emma's heart skipped a beat. She had known for a while that her feelings for Kevin had deepened, but hearing him say the words out loud made it all feel real. "I feel the same way," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "You've been my rock. I couldn't have done any of this without you." She looked at him, the words she had been holding in finally tumbling out. "Kevin, I love you." It was the first time she had said those words aloud, but it felt right, as if they had always been there, waiting to be spoken. Kevin stopped walking and turned to face her, his eyes filled with warmth and tenderness. "I love you too, Emma," he said, his voice full of emotion. "I always have." In that moment, with the city lights glowing around them and the world bustling on in the background, Emma realized that she had found something far more precious than just success. She had found love, something real and lasting, something that had given her the courage to pursue her dreams. And now, with Kevin by her side, she knew that anything was possible. As they stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, Emma knew that this was just the beginning. There was still so much to do, so many dreams to chase. But now, she wasn't doing it alone. She had Kevin, and together, they would face whatever came next, ready for whatever life had in store. As the months passed, Emma's studio continued to grow, attracting more visitors and art enthusiasts with each passing day. Her dream was slowly turning into something far more tangible than she had ever imagined. But despite the outward success, there were moments when the pressure weighed heavily on her. The demands of running a business, managing her art, and meeting the expectations of her clients sometimes left her feeling exhausted. It wasn't the failure she feared anymore. It was the fear of not being enough, of disappointing herself and everyone who had supported her. One evening, after a long day at the studio, Emma sat in her small office, looking out the window at the city lights. The weight of everything she had built was starting to take its toll. She had always been determined, but now, more than ever, she was starting to feel the full responsibility of her success. She thought about her family, about how she had promised them she would make something of herself. She thought about Kevin and how much he had helped her, but the weight of her own expectations made her feel isolated, as though she was carrying everything on her own. Kevin noticed the change in Emma. He saw the way she began to retreat into herself, the way the sparkle in her eyes started to fade under the weight of stress. One night, after dinner, he sat down across from her at the kitchen table, his gaze serious. "Emma, I've noticed you've been pulling away lately," he said softly, his voice gentle but filled with concern. "Is everything okay?" He had always known her to be strong, but this wasn't the same confident, determined woman he had fallen for. Emma looked up at him, her heart heavy. She wanted to say everything was fine, that she could handle it all, but the truth was, she didn't feel fine. She didn't feel strong. "I'm just tired," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I thought I could do this. I thought I could make everything work. But sometimes it feels like I'm not enough, like I'm letting everyone down." She paused, the vulnerability in her words catching her off guard. "I'm scared that this whole thing will fall apart, that everything I've worked for will just slip away." Her eyes filled with tears, and she quickly wiped them away, not wanting to appear weak. Kevin reached across the table, taking her hand in his. "Emma," he said, his voice soft and reassuring. "You are more than enough. You've built this studio from nothing. You've created something beautiful, something that matters. But you don't have to do it alone. I'm here with you. We're in this together, and I'm not going anywhere." He squeezed her hand gently, his eyes filled with unwavering support. "I've seen your strength, your passion, and I know you can handle anything. But it's okay to lean on others too. You don't have to carry everything by yourself." He smiled, his voice softening. "You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be you, and that's enough. You've already proven that." His words wrapped around her like a warm blanket, and for the first time in weeks, Emma allowed herself to feel the weight lift. Emma took a deep breath, feeling the tension in her shoulders ease. She had been so afraid of failing, of not living up to the expectations she had set for herself, that she had forgotten one important thing. She didn't have to do it all alone. Kevin's words, his presence, made her realize that it was okay to ask for help, that she wasn't weak for needing support. She had built this studio on her own, but she didn't have to face the challenges alone. With Kevin by her side, she knew that together, they could overcome anything. The next morning, Emma woke up with a renewed sense of purpose. She still had a lot of work ahead of her, but she knew she wasn't alone in this anymore. She had Kevin, and she had her own strength. With his support, she was ready to face whatever came next, knowing that even on the hardest days, she had someone who believed in her, someone who would always be there. As she walked into the studio that morning, Emma felt a surge of determination. The fear and doubt that had clouded her mind were still there, but they no longer controlled her. She was ready to move forward, to embrace the challenges and celebrate the victories. And with Kevin by her side, she knew that no matter what happened, they would face it together. As Emma stepped into her studio the next day, a sense of calm washed over her. The sunlight streamed through the large windows, casting a golden glow over the space. The paintings, now hanging on the walls, seemed to come alive in the light. Emma took a deep breath, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. Her dream was no longer just a dream. It was her reality, and she was ready to make it even bigger. She had Kevin's support, and she knew now more than ever that she could handle whatever came her way. Kevin had been her rock through all of this, and their relationship had deepened in ways she hadn't anticipated. They weren't just partners in business anymore. They were partners in life. Emma realized she had begun to see him not just as someone who believed in her, but as someone who completed her. With him by her side, everything seemed possible. The weight of her fears, once so overwhelming, felt lighter when shared with him. One evening, after a long day at the studio, Kevin invited Emma out for a quiet dinner. They went to a small restaurant that they had discovered a few weeks ago, a place they both enjoyed, away from the usual hustle of city life. Over dinner, they talked about everything and nothing. Emma couldn't help but smile as she watched Kevin laugh, his eyes bright with joy. It had been a while since they had had a quiet, carefree night. For a moment, the world outside seemed to disappear, leaving just the two of them in their own little bubble. Kevin looked at Emma with a soft smile, his gaze thoughtful. "I've been thinking about something," he said, his voice gentle. "I know we've been taking things slow, but I can't help but feel like we've built something really special together. This studio, this life we've created, it feels like the beginning of something more. Something real." His eyes met hers, and Emma felt a flutter in her chest. "I feel the same way," Emma replied, her voice soft but full of emotion. She reached across the table and took his hand. All of this, it's more than I ever expected. I didn't think I would ever find someone who believed in me like you do. I never thought I could have both a dream and someone who supports it so fully. You've made me believe in myself, Kevin. And for that, I'll be forever grateful." Kevin squeezed her hand, his smile widening. "Emma, you've always had that belief inside you. I just gave you the space to let it grow. I've never met anyone like you. You're strong, talented, and your heart is so full of love. I'm proud of everything you've accomplished, and I want to be there for everything that comes next, no matter what." He leaned in slightly, his voice low and sincere. "I don't want to waste any more time. I want to take this next step with you, not just as your partner in business, but in life." He paused, his eyes softening. "Emma, will you marry me?" The question hung in the air, simple but profound. Emma's heart stopped for a moment as she looked at Kevin, her mind racing. She had never expected this. Not now, not when everything was still so new. But as she looked into his eyes, she realized she couldn't imagine her life without him in it. She had already fallen so deeply in love with him, and this moment felt like the natural next step. She smiled, a tear slipping down her cheek as she nodded. "Yes," she whispered, her voice full of emotion. "Yes, I'll marry you." Kevin's face broke into a wide smile as he reached across the table, pulling her into a tight embrace. Emma felt a rush of happiness fill her, knowing that this moment, this new chapter, was exactly what she had been waiting for. They had built something incredible together, and now they were ready to build a future. As they stood together that night, Kevin's arms around her, Emma realized that this wasn't just the culmination of a dream. It was the beginning of a new adventure. Together, they had faced their fears, built something lasting, and now they were about to take the next step. With Kevin by her side, Emma knew that anything was possible. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, as partners, as equals, and as people who had found something real in each other. The months that followed were a whirlwind of excitement and preparation. Emma and Kevin dove into their wedding plans with the same enthusiasm they had for everything they had built together. They chose a small venue, simple, elegant, and filled with personal touches that reflected their journey. It wasn't the lavish affair that many people might expect from someone as successful as Kevin. Instead, it was a quiet celebration of love, surrounded by close friends and family who had supported them along the way. As the wedding day approached, Emma found herself reflecting on everything that had brought her to this point. The fears, the doubts, and the obstacles that once seemed so insurmountable now felt distant, like old memories. She remembered the young woman who had walked into that cafe all those months ago, unsure of her future, unsure of herself. That woman had come a long way. She had taken chances, faced her fears, and trusted in the support of someone who believed in her. And now, she was about to marry the man who had stood by her through it all. On the day of the wedding, Emma stood in front of the mirror in her dress, her heart racing with anticipation. It was the same dress she had imagined wearing when she first started dreaming of this moment. A simple gown with delicate lace, timeless and beautiful. As she looked at herself, she saw not just the woman who had built her art studio, but the woman who had learned to trust, to love, and to believe in herself. It wasn't just the success of her business that made her proud. It was the love she had found with Kevin, the partnership they had built, and the life they were about to begin. When Kevin saw Emma walking down the aisle, his heart skipped a beat. She was even more beautiful than he had imagined. The woman who had captured his heart, the woman who had stood by him through everything, was now standing before him, ready to begin the next chapter of their lives together. His eyes filled with tears, and he could barely contain his emotions as she reached him at the altar. "You look stunning," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "I've never seen anything more beautiful." Emma smiled, her heart full, as she took his hand in hers. As they exchanged vows, Emma's voice wavered with emotion. "Kevin, when we first met, I had no idea what the future held. I was scared, uncertain, and unsure of everything. But with you, I've learned to believe in myself, in my dreams, and in us. You've shown me what true partnership is, what it means to be supported, to be loved, and to grow together. I promise to always be there for you, to love you, and to build a life with you, no matter what comes our way." Kevin's eyes softened as he spoke his vows. "Emma, from the moment I met you, I knew you were something special. You've changed my life in ways I never thought possible. I promise to always stand by your side, to support you, and to love you with everything I have. Together, we've built something beautiful, and I can't wait to see where this journey takes us." As they exchanged rings and the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Emma felt a sense of peace settle over her. This wasn't just the end of one chapter. It was the beginning of a new adventure. Together, she and Kevin would face whatever life had in store for them, knowing they had each other to rely on. That evening, as they danced under the stars at their reception, Emma felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. The journey they had taken, from the moment they met to this very moment, had been filled with challenges, but also with love, laughter, and growth. She knew there would be more obstacles ahead, but with Kevin by her side, she felt ready for anything. As they danced together, Emma looked into Kevin's eyes and whispered, "I'm so glad I found you." Kevin smiled, pulling her closer. "Me too," he said softly. "I think we're just getting started." And in that moment, surrounded by the people they loved, Emma realized that life wasn't about avoiding the hard times. It was about facing them together, hand in hand, ready for whatever the future held. And as the night went on, filled with music and laughter, Emma knew one thing for certain. This was only the beginning. Together, they had built something real, something worth fighting for. And with Kevin by her side, she was ready to face the future, knowing that whatever came their way, they would build it together.